Getting started on the bumper. I don't know if you can see all this or not, but I showed you earlier that's got this groove in it. A couple places where the paint was cracked. I just took a little sharp PDR tool and I just pressed in on those little spots and just forced the plastic back in, compressed it. There's a little bit of a body line right here, runs all the way down. And there's one right here that kind of just fades out, disappears into here somewhere. Those are essentially okay. I'm just going to put some filler over all this this little groove that's in it, and I'm just going to block it back out, get those body lines back in. Right now I'm just going to sand all this off down to the plastic, and I'll just add some filler in there. And there's one spot back here also, I don't know if you can see that, right back here where the headlight, when the headlight came out of the car, it cut the back of this, right under here where the headlight's going to come. I think it's still going to show though, so I'm going to have to put some filler right in that edge and level that back off, get that gouge out of it. The rest of it's just going to be sanding cracks out of the paint and putting a little primer on it. I'm going to go ahead and get this sanded out and get some filler ready. Alright, I got it most of it sanded out. You can really see the groove now, right in here. I've got to sand all that out, kind of taper it a little more than it is, and get all that paint out. Finish taking the paint off these edges, right around in here and right there. And feather it out a little bit more. I'm going to get some filler and put over that, and that spot up at the top. I'll let that sit up for probably another day, probably at least overnight, while I finish working on the door. And then I'll come back to this. I shouldn't need a second application on here, so I'll let this sit, finish the door, come back, block this, prime it all. I'm using 5887 on this. I should have put it inside last night, warmed it up. It gets pretty stiff when it's cold. I did spray some adhesion promoter on this plastic before I put this on and let it sit for about, I guess about 15 minutes almost. I have to put a little more on here. Not sure how much plastic I took off whenever I sanded through it, or through the paint. I sanded most of the ridge out of there. So I need to build up enough to be able to block it down, not leave it low. This ought to be enough. I'm going to try to leave that body line in this when I finish it off here. Let's get it close. I know I don't need much on this edge. Sit right there at the top. I'll take most of this right here back off. Side. Now right there's paint, that's not adhesive. I'm try to leave this body line in here. It starts somewhere right in here. Probably just gonna have to block it into it. Really can't tell where it is. It's so faint. Just have to block it out. I think that's good there. We'll level out that one at the top. Be back to block it later. Now that that's on and setting up, I'm going to go put some more filler on the door. Let me get that mixed up and I'll show you where I am now and then we'll put that on. I've got a new piece of paper here. Just pulled it back a couple inches. We'll take a little more paint out of here with 180. Get all this 80 grit out of this. And come back and just hit this lightly with 180 to get some of the straight line scratches out. And put regular filler around this area. I'm trying to pull this back a little further to get some more metal exposed. So I've just got filler on the metal. Hopefully this will be the only layer I have to put on, but we'll see. Probably going to have to add a little bit. After I block this first layer, but I'd like to not have to do any more. Try to feather it out as much as I can now. Alright, I'm going to leave that. Hopefully that's all I need. If not, I may need to put a little more. Maybe just for pinholes. Alright, I'm getting ready to prime the door and the bumper. Kind of tight on room here. It's supposed to get down in the teens and stay below freezing for about 3 days here, which is not normal. So I got to keep everything inside. Got all my paint inside, just so it doesn't get too cold. I've gone over pinhole areas and put some more filler over with razor blade. Everything's looking good. I've got this in, this was 180. I've got gone over a little bit with 400 out to here. Still some 180 in here, I'm sure, or a little bit finer. I'm going to try to go right in here with the primer and have enough to feather it back a little bit and stay over my 180 grit scratches. So I need to come out to somewhere in here. And I had to sand a little paint off inside the front edge here just because it broke the paint. So I got to put a little bit of at least epoxy in there, and I may have to mask the car off where I can spray inside the door here, and then shut the door, paint the outside. And I'll use activated base coat so I don't have to get full clear coverage in there anyway. I'd like to, but we'll see. That's done. I've got a filler and a chip there, and down there at the bottom. So that's setting up right now. I'll sand that whenever I sand the spots there with the pinholes. Got the bumper ready to go. This is going to have to be probably going to just grind this down and just add some material here, probably some panel bond. But I don't have to do that yet. That can be done after the primer's on. I'm trying to get the primer on as soon as possible so it can set up and cure for as long as possible. Got this spot here fixed. That was just sort of took a block and just bridged across that and sanded that down until it came out flat. Then I sanded out all the paint cracks in here. So essentially, I'm going to be priming the top of the bumper on this side and then down that side there. And I got this as close as I could as far as the body line that runs through here. I can feel it up here. I feel it sort of fading out there, which is what it does. So we'll see what it looks like when I prime it. I can get a little bit sharper line in it when I block it for paint. But right now I may have to either back this one out or throw some plastic over it so I can prime this. I'm going to get the epoxy on that, and then while that's setting up I can sand these other areas just a little bit and also mask off the bumper where I don't want the primer to get, because that doesn't have to have any epoxy on it. It'll be another 15 or 20 minutes till the epoxy is ready to go. But right now I'm going to go ahead and, while I'm waiting on that, do what I can to prep this and mask it off. And I may even do this, but I'd like to get the epoxy on the door first, no matter what. Then I'll come back and get the primer on this and the rest of the door. Alright, the door is ready to prime, and those spots that need it up at the front, little dings right in here, chip there, and a couple at the very bottom. There's the epoxy. It's been sitting there for about 45-50 minutes. I got to give it 1 hour, so I went ahead and put adhesion promoter on this area. Started that about 20 minutes ahead of the time the primer can go on the door and on this, because I've got a 5-minute flash time after the first light coat of this, and then 15 minutes of flash time before I can prime it. So that gives me 20 minutes. So I started 20 minutes before I can get the primer on this and this to apply this stuff. Started that 20 minutes ahead of time. So right when this stuff's flashed, I can I'll start on the door first and then come over here, hit this, get that first light coat on, let it be flashing off for about 10 minutes since it's so cool in here. And I'll probably turn the heater on over there and run in between coats. I'll need at least probably 3 coats on the door, definitely 3 coats there. May be able to get by with 2 coats at the top. I don't want a whole lot of film build on something flexible if I can help it. I'm going to need it here to block this out, but underneath here, you can barely even see this. The headlight sits right up next to this. It shows a little, but it's not anything that's got to be blocked out, perfectly straight. It'll be pretty straight, but it's not going to be like this over here at least. That's going to get at least 3 coats right there, probably stop with 3. And then I'll repair that tab down at the bottom once I'm done priming. I got to get the primer on it now. Alright, I'm about to start prepping for paint here. I had to go ahead and test fit the fender just to make sure that it's going to fit the car. I'm going to paint it off the car with the front bumper. That way I've got those 2 pieces off, since the bumper's got to be done off the car anyway. That'll give me less to do on the car, so I don't have such a broad area here to have to do it all at one time. That way I can just focus on spraying the door and blend into the back, not having to worry about keeping all of this wet all at one time. I'll pull the fender back off pretty soon here, start prepping the jam. That way I can spray the whole thing at one time with the bumper. I'm going to try to paint the car first. That way all this is drying for me, so I can go ahead and start building back the doors, getting those put back together as soon as possible, and then let the fender and the bumper dry while I'm doing that, and come back and just hang those on the car last. Got a good gap here, I'll show you that. Everything lined up. Had to lift the hood just a little bit. I think something got tweaked whenever the headlight pulled up so hard on it. When it flipped over, the headlight just flipped over like that. It was sticking out of the car when I got the car. But But everything looks good now. This will also save me, painting this off the car will save me from having to mask all this off. And then get full coverage around all that. I'm going to go ahead and pull the fender off now. I'm going to start prepping all this for paint. I'll probably start with this. If not, I'll do the bumper and the fender together first. Alright, I've got it ready to go here. It actually warmed up a little bit today, so I'm going to go ahead and try to do it. I'm going to put adhesion promoter. Well, first I'm going to mask the door off, the front door. I need to spray some down in the jamb. I didn't want to have to do that separately. So if I put a piece of paper over this, I can shoot some paint down in there and not have to worry about building it up on the door. Get some coverage in there. Then I'll pull the paper off the door and start doing the color on the outside. But first thing I got to do is put some adhesion promoter on the back. It's basically like a clear sealer. So I'm going to cover this entire area. I got a little cut through right there to right at the surface of my filler. I'm not going to worry about that because I'm just going to put base coat over all this. And if that starts to show, I'll just let it dry and sand it out. And then wait till it's dry and put another coat over it. I'm going to go ahead and get this going. Alright, base coat will be next. It's got the jam done. I put a little bit on that spot where it's cut through to the filler, just so that can dry off and let me sand it a little bit before I start the actual base coat. Alright, I just put on a kind of a lighter coat. I didn't want to put any on too heavy to eat through any of my feather edges. I'm going to let that go and see how far I am. It's actually looking pretty good, but I wasn't going for full coverage right then. I'm going to do probably one more of those coats and then I'll start blending it. My second coat of base. pretty good. I'm going to do a drop coat now. I may have to thin what's left to do the blend. Alright, I'm going to thin it just a hair, finish up the blend. It's pretty good right now, but it can be better. Okay, before I do the blend, I'm going to let all this back here on the back door dry completely so that I can come back here and tack off all this dust. I don't want to do my blend over all the dust that got on here from doing the initial base coats. It's two full coats of base plus a drop coat. Now I'm going to let that dry and tack it. Then I'll come back with my thinned base coat. I just did it 1-to-1 again with the base coat reducer, so I'll come back and do you can see it right in here a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and fade that a little bit further back, and but I want to let it dry so I can tack this before I do it. That may have to do there. I'll let it dry and see what it looks like. It's going to get one more coat and I'll be back.